Hello, and welcome to Kick Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb. I am your host, Stephanie McPhail, Toxic Relationship Recovery Coach. My co-host, Steve, is not available again this week. So if you miss him, make sure you send him a message and say, Steve, where are you? He had really important business to do today during the show. So I said, hey, you know what? We're going to have some girl time and we're going to have a great show, even though you're not there. So sorry, Steve, but we're still going to be okay. So I wanted to just kind of let you know today, give you a little bit of a trigger warning before we start. We're going to be talking about suicide. This is going to be a conversation that we have not yet had on this show. And this is about kicking unhealthy relationships to the curb. And one of them is our thoughts and feelings about ourselves and the situation that we are in our life. So when our guest and I spoke, I said, oh my gosh, we have to have you on the show and really talk about this really important topic. So before I go too much into it, I'm going to let you know Rebekah Hope is going to be on our show today. She is an author. So let's watch this quick video and then I'll introduce her and bring her on. Love it. Okay, so bear with me as I read. I'm getting older. I'm starting to need everything to be further away. Rebekah Hope is an author, speaker, certified life coach. She is originally from a small Amish community in northern Michigan. Having experienced various types of abuse as a child and feeling trapped in an environment that nearly took her life, Rebekah chose to leave the Amish life behind at 17 years old, including everything and everyone she knew, and traveled across the country with only the clothes on her back and a few dollars in her pocket. Apart from the major culture shock, Rebekah experienced life in ways some would deem unimaginable. After surviving a suicide attempt at 18 years old, she found a new meaning to life and vowed to herself and to the next generation that she would use her story to help as many people as possible. Today, Rebekah has done that through her book, Beyond the Brokenness, and by becoming a certified life coach, specializing in personal development to help people through the most challenging parts of their lives. Rebekah coaches from personal experience as well as from professional education in psychology and mental health. Seeing as how far her life has been transformed through a series of better choices, Rebekah strongly believes there is hope for all, and she is bringing that hope to anyone who is willing to stop and hear her voice. Rebekah's motto is, do what you can with what you have from where you are, because there is hope for all. So let's welcome Rebekah Hope onto Kicking Healthy Relationships to the Curb. Good to see you, Rebekah.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. You know, Rebekah and I only recently just met, and I pretty much decided to have her on the show immediately because her story is very different than any of the guests that we've had on so far. And I'm really excited to share, your journey with everyone who's watching. So if you don't mind telling us a little, I mean, there's Amish background, there's suicide background, there's like all of these things. So like, tell us, my gosh, like tell us your story. Like, how did you get, like, what was going on for you?
Yeah, so I want to make sure I'm talking about what you want me to talk about. Do you want me to go into my Amish background, or do you want me to
Let's start. I mean, there's, like I said, there's so much. So let's start
Yeah.
with the beginning. So you
Okay.
grew up Amish. That means like no
Yes.
electricity or phones or anything?
Yeah. So I always the best way for me to describe the Amish life is that it's the closest to the pioneer life that you will get these days, pretty much, and all in America. With all the modernized technology, we didn't have any of that. So it was like horse-drawn carriages and pretty much everything done by hand. Yeah.
Wow. And of course, you wouldn't have known anything else because that's all you experienced from the time you were born.
Right.
So what was that like as a teenager? Kind of, did you kind of see other kids doing other things and see the bigger world and then you like, what was that like experiencing that?
Yeah, so the biggest question I always get is, what was it like being Amish? And I'm like, well, that's all I knew. So how do I tell you what it was like?
Yeah.
It was live. It was normal for me. But I will say, the older I got, the more I got a glimpse of the outside world and what it was, what people who were in Amish lived like. But we were very sheltered, so I didn't get a whole lot of that. The biggest thing that I remember growing up is I know there's something more, and I want that more. I didn't know what it was, but I was determined to find out.
So now I've seen the show, and I'd love for you to dispel anything that's untrue, because that's, I mean, all I've known is I remember going and learning about Amish culture when I was in like high school, because we live not far from Pennsylvania and there's a very big Amish community there. I had no idea until we spoke that there was an Amish community in the Michigan area. I had no idea. So what is it? Is it true that at 16, kids are allowed to leave the Amish life to experience what it's like in the outside world, and then decide from there if they want to come back and have their family or be cast off and not have anybody left? Is that true?
Yes, so it is true and it isn't true. And what I mean by that is there are different sects of Amish, meaning they not all Amish are the same. Some have rules that are different than the others. It just depends what community you're from. So now my community would have never allowed that, but there are Amish who do allow that.
Okay.
Mhm.
So 17, you left. What made you decide to leave to begin with? I mean, and then I guess the second follow-up question is, how scary was that to leave?
Yeah, so what made me leave really, I mean, from the time I was 8 years old, I was already a suicidal bulimia. So you can imagine, just by saying that, like my life wasn't wasn't exactly what should have been normal. I experienced a lot of abuse growing up, and so that's why by the time I was 8 years old, I was already having all these suicidal ideations. Um, but I would say the reason I left was because in my mind, I had convinced myself in order for me to find what I'm looking for and escape what I was experiencing was to completely leave the Amish culture behind and seek a way outside of the Amish.
So there was abuse going on, and I'm guessing that there was no support for you. There was no like mental health or any kind of support. I mean, through schooling or outside of the home, there was no one there to help you through any of the abuse that was going on.
Right, because I didn't even know what I was going through wasn't normal. I just knew I didn't like it and it didn't feel right. And
Hmm.
that is also why I am such a strong advocate for people who are going through similar things, is because I vowed I would be that person I needed when I was a little girl that I didn't know existed, and I had convinced myself they didn't exist. I didn't know there was help out there. I didn't have the slightest idea where to even go to find it if somebody would have told me there's help out there.
So, and I love that, is to be the person that you wish you had when you were a little girl. And that to me is so powerful, because I mean, how beautiful would it be for us now as the strong, independent women that we have become, to be able to have been that person that we needed. And since we can't go back in time, we can actually now do that for other people. So I love that you said that. So okay, so you decide to leave. Did you like leave with your like I'm just picturing like you're leaving this community with no power, no like cars or anything like that. Did you have like a backpack and you were just kind of out? Like what were your thing? You just grabbed your stuff and left? What happened?
Yeah, so the reason that I was like, yes, it was scary to leave, but the reason I convinced myself too was because I believed that leaving, and if I wouldn't survive in that, that would be better than where I was. Because you got to keep in mind, I already believed I was a mistake. I already believed I shouldn't be here. So I was looking for ways to end my life. So if
Mhm.
that meant leaving the Amish and I wouldn't survive, I didn't care. Like that,
Wow.
that's just the place I was.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was scary, but to me, not as scary as staying. Um, so a little bit like what it was like leaving. I pretty much left home. I left a note in the house for my parents, because I couldn't have told them that I'm leaving and then left, because they wouldn't have let me leave.
Mhm.
But I had the clothes on my back, and I had a cell phone with a few minutes on it, and someone came and picked me up. I had someone give me a ride to the bus station, and where I bought a ticket, and the person who picked me up gave me a pair of clothes that were not Amish and a backpack with a couple of things in it. I left after I bought the ticket. I had that and pretty much $20 left over. And the ticket that I bought, I didn't even know how to read it. I had never read a bus ticket before. And I was traveling from Michigan to Minnesota. So if that gives you a little bit of a picture, yeah, it was scary. But I'm glad I did it.
Wow. There's as much as it's such a different story, but when I was in an abusive marriage, when I decided to leave, it was kind of the same thing. Like, it was to the point of, if he kills me, it's still going to be better than staying here. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we get to those places in our lives where it's like, whatever, there has to be something better. I cannot have been put on this earth to experience only what I've experienced. And so I'm glad that you listened to that voice, and instead of staying trapped where you were, like, actually decided to take action on that. And how scary that would be, especially having been so sheltered. And then all of a sudden you're going to the big wide world, like, completely by yourself with $20 in your pocket. And how did you meet someone to give you money and clothes and stuff like that? Was it someone from the community, or did you happen to meet someone that was like, you got to get out of here, I'm coming to help?
It was a neighbor friend. Somebody that the Amish knew very well. It was somebody that, well, he knew my family. My family knew him. And he, I was like, hey, I'll give you money to take me to the bus station. And he picked me up and took me there. And yeah, I haven't seen him since.
Now, how about your family? Do you have any contact with your family?
So as of right now, the only communication I have with my family is through writing letters, which happens every so often. They don't have a phone. They don't call. We don't talk in that way. Every once in a while, I will go visit. But since I've been married also, that has not happened, because they, I guess the nicest way to put it is they don't approve of my husband, because I got married outside of the Amish. Therefore, it's really hard to go back and visit if I'm not allowed to bring my husband.
Yeah. So they've never met him?
Nope. They don't even know who he is, really. All they know is he did not grow up Amish.
So let's back up. So now, I mean, obviously you're in a very different place now, but so you were 17, you left, and if I remember correctly, it was 18 that you had. That was not your first suicide attempt, or it was?
So at 18 years old, yes, that was my first suicide attempt. And kind of what led up to that was backtracing. Like, the way I see that it happened was, I left all of that behind, but I hadn't found what I was looking for. So instead of kind of progressing, I went backwards. And now suddenly I was in a big white world with absolutely nobody. Mm-hmm. And now it was like survival mode of, am I going to have food to eat today? Am I going to have a place to sleep tonight? There was a point in time where I slept in my car, and there were times where I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from. Mm-hmm. So that kind of led up to, I didn't find what I was looking for when I left. So this is probably it. I was probably looking for something that doesn't exist. And I really just didn't see any other way out. I was completely hopeless and devastated, because I didn't think that my existence mattered. Mm. I didn't think that I was beneficial to anybody, and that anyone would miss me if I was gone.
Oof. This is Kicking Healthy Relationships to the Curb. I am your host, Stephanie McPhail. This is our guest, Rebekah Hope, and she is sharing an amazing story of triumph through some of the worst times of your life. So how did you? I mean, you attempted suicide? Did you end up in the hospital? I mean, because I'm wondering, like, in my head, I'm thinking, how is this poor girl getting money, and how, like, where is she? You're saying you're staying in your car, like, what? what you had nothing. So where, what happened? I'm just there's a lot of questions, I guess, because it's like, wow, here you were thinking like I had no reason to be here and you have nothing, and then you attempt to take your life. What happened at that point?
Yeah, so my circumstances at the time that I attempted to take my life, I was living with the person that I was taking care of. I was an in-home caregiver. And so that was the only roof over my head, the only means to have food the next day. But it was also my abuser. So there was a lot of being taken advantage of because I was a young girl and did not know what boundaries were. I didn't know what was right or wrong or where the line was. Um, and that kind of just, I left and I attempted to crash my car, which I did, and I completely totaled my car, but somehow I survived with just pretty much some scrapes. Like that was about it. Like I had a light concussion, but nothing permanent. There was nothing broken, nothing of that sort. And I actually rolled my car 3 times, and everything was pretty much crashed in except the driver's seat.
Wow.
And so if that doesn't tell you how much the grace of God was on my life, I don't know what will. But I just walked away there feeling like, man, there is something more. I was missing something, because there is no way I would have survived something like that if it wouldn't have been for God. And at that point, like I had already accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, but I didn't have the support to help someone, or someone help me understand the Bible, who Jesus truly was, and what it meant to be born again and to walk it out. So yeah, they did take me to the hospital, and after I left there, I really dug deep into my relationship with God and was like, okay, I know there's more. You've shown me, so please just. I was pretty much on my knees begging for him to show me the next move, because I could not keep going like this.
Now, so, for me personally, I mean, talking about suicide is such a personal thing as well. And for anybody who's watching, I mean, statistically, there is a very good chance that someone listening, watching right now has either attempted themselves, or at the very least knows someone who has. I was a certified crisis counselor for 13 and a half years. I was someone who answered crisis phone calls. A lot of times by myself in the middle of the night. I would do overnights. And so we would get calls of people that were actively suicidal, and have to call the police and get them help. But also personally, I mean, one of the things that I, have not really shared, my younger sister, the youngest of all my dad's children, was attempted suicide several times. And her reasoning was because my parents were very religious and strict. And my sister was questioning her sexuality. And instead of sharing with them what her feelings were, she thought it made more sense to end her life. And luckily, finally, after I think the one where she was caught, I think the third attempt, she had attempted other times, but not where she ended up in the hospital. The third attempt, she finally came out to my father. And my father said, I would rather I'd rather you be alive than dead. So we will figure it out. We will support you. And it wasn't all roses after the fact, which I would guess is probably the same for you. But she's alive and happily married and has 4 beautiful children, and was doing so well. And my uncle committed suicide, and his son found him. And at the time he was 16, I don't even know what happened to that cousin, because he was never the same after that. Obviously you find your father like that. It was a horrible situation. So, and I'm sure that people that are watching right now might have their own stories to share. So what could you give as maybe a light for someone who might be in the darkness right now, some hope that maybe you can share, who might be feeling suicidal?
Yeah, I just want to say if you're struggling with that, or if you've ever thought about taking your own life as a means to an end, I just want to say it's not a means to an end. It really isn't. And if I can give you perspective, so I truly believe anybody who attempts to take their life, they're not attempting to take their life, they're attempting to end the pain in their life.
Yes.
And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't end the pain.
Mm-hmm.
It really truly does not. And if you truly believe that it does, then you're failing to see something. And that what you're failing to see is that you were born for a reason, you were born for a purpose. You're not a mistake. You really, truly are not a mistake. And this world would not be better without you. If you are here, if you are living and breathing, then there is a purpose for you, and this world needs you. If nothing else, then they need to hear your story, because and that's exactly why I'm sharing my story. Because how selfish of me to not share my story when I can bring hope to you when you didn't know anything else? What if I'm the only hope you will ever see?
Mm-hmm.
What if you're the only hope someone else is going to see, and you may or may not just save their life? That in and of itself is enough purpose and reason to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's part of my what I do for life coaching is your relationship with yourself is first and foremost. If that is not in alignment, then everything else is just going to fall. And that's what that comes from personal experience. I teach a lot from personal experience. Your mindset, your thoughts, it is everything. The life you are living today comes from the thoughts that you had yesterday, the day before that, maybe even a year ago. You are living that life, and what that tells you is you can change your thoughts and you can change your life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And it's so, and again, this is such a heavy topic, but I think it's so important to be aware that this is something to talk about. And, looking at statistics, men are more likely to commit suicide than women. Minorities are more likely to commit suicide. And so this is a real active issue in the world today, not just in America, but in other places in the world. So here you are now, Rebekah. You have a platform. You're an author. So tell us a little bit. I mean, I know your book is basically your story, but tell us just a little bit about your book and what you share in there.
Yeah, so my book called Beyond the Brokenness, it is just the story of a simple Amish girl who chose to do something more with her life. I talk about kind of the abuse that I experienced as a child, being bullied throughout my school years, how and why I was suicidal by the time I was 8 years old, and a bulimia. Like, I had so many self-destructive habits that it's a miracle I'm here, and it's a miracle you're here as well. There's just you being alive is a miracle. We are living, breathing miracles. And I talk about that in my book, where uh, I was I was suicidal and trying to look for ways to end my life, and what it was like living at home with 7 siblings. It wasn't like I was an only child.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt like I never belonged. Somehow I felt like I never belonged. I was never enough. And then by the time I was actually, when I was 16, I tried to run away from home, but I was forced back. I talk about that in the book. And then just really the picture of what it meant to leave everything behind and starting new in a world I knew nothing about. I went through major culture shock. And then I go on to talk about how I found Jesus as my Lord and Savior, how he did, in fact, become my best friend. To this day, he's the only best friend I've ever had, but he's more than enough. And I talk a little bit about that and how that can help you as well. Even if you're not a religious person, or if you're not spiritual, or you don't believe in Jesus and all of that, it's still all relevant. I'm not saying you have to believe in Jesus in order to have hope, or to not be suicidal. I'm just speaking from my own experience. And I
Mhm.
talk about that in the book as well. And then I kind of wrap it up with what it looks like to be surrounded by a community of people who will walk alongside you and actually help you become a better person and share with the world your talents and your abilities, what you were put on this earth to do. So that, yeah, that kind of sums it up.
So, it's interesting. So you grew up in a community that's supposed to be so close knit and supposed to be so supportive of each other, and you felt like the black sheep, like you didn't belong and like something was missing. And I think that for people who are listening right now, I think that's something to remind yourself that maybe wherever you were put, because I think a lot of us have felt, if not for a long time, at least a period of time in our lives, like we didn't fit in, like we weren't part of the people that really understood us. And so, again, for you to have been able to go and find that community, find that support, and now look at where you are now. Again, you're an author, you're a coach, you do all these things to help other people. And had you not left what was not serving you, who knows? You might not be alive. You might not be, you wouldn't be here. And
Mhm.
so, I think that anyone who's struggling and thinking, should I go follow that part of my heart that's saying that there's more for me? I mean, look at Rebekah and give yourself that inspiration to realize that you do no one a service by staying in a place where you are not authentically yourself. It is so important to go out there and be true to yourself because you're not living somebody else's life. This is your life for you to live.
Yeah.
So, Rebekah, we've got like a few more minutes, and I would love to just hear, I mean, final thoughts. I'd love to hear about how you met your husband. So let's start with how you met your husband. Let's hear a little bit. I'm excited to hear about it. How did you guys meet?
Yeah, so it's actually going to be in my second book, which is a sequel to the first book. It's going to wrap up with me walking down the aisle. And I met him after I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. Once again, I uprooted and left everyone I knew and went into a city, really, that I knew nobody.
Mhm.
And it ended up where the roommate I was with at the time, the person I was staying with at the time, she's like, you gotta talk to this guy, somebody on Facebook. And long story short, she messages him for me. And then after that, we just started talking. We were talking through Facebook and Messenger, like about 2 weeks or so. And then he asked me out on a date, and pretty much the rest is history. And what I want to say to that is, when it is meant to be, it will be. Because I was at a place in my life where I actually finally got to the point where I would have been okay being single, because I had found myself again. And I was ready to just live the life God had for me, whether that included a husband or not.
I love it. I love it. That's so
Hmm.
funny how that happens because that's how I met my husband too. I was like, I'm just going to be single forever and be okay with it. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, let me introduce you to someone that's not going to be the case. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to give him a chance then.
I love that. Yes.
So
Um,
tell us about how people can find you.
Yeah, so it is super easy nowadays to find anybody. And if you want to find me, I can easily be found on any social media platform under Rebekah Hope. Um, my Instagram handle might be like Rebekah Hope Author, but for the most part, it's Rebekah Hope. I have a website, RebekahHope.org. You can find me that way as well. And if you want to even send me a letter, I have a P.O. box on there as well that you will be able to do that if you choose to. But yes, there are so many ways to find me. Just Google Rebekah Hope.
I love that you can write a letter to you too. Like the background is still there. It's like, okay, you can also
Yes.
write any way you need to get me. There is all the
Yep.
ways to get me.
Yeah,
So
and if I can say just one thing to
yeah,
that too, leaving, and I'm coming, my 10-year anniversary of leaving the Amish is coming up. And after about 10 years leaving, and now looking back, seeing my family, the Amish community now, I have so much more respect for them, so much more appreciation for them, and even just the way I was raised. Like, there are so many things that I value that I didn't before. And, writing letters is just one of them that I still treasure. There's just nothing like that physical piece of paper in hand, somebody writing it to you.
Agreed. It's so much more real than in getting all the mail that we don't want, the junk mail. You get an
Yep.
actual letter. It's so exciting. Like, oh, someone really actually thought about me.
Yes. Very much
Well,
so.
that time went by so quickly. I just want to thank everybody for watching. And Rebekah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. If you want to share just one more time, just your website, so that if anybody wants to reach out to you, and if you want to share a really quick tidbit to leave the audience with.
Yeah. So my website, RebekahHope.org, RebekahHope.org. You'll find pretty much anything you need in there to contact me various ways. And then one last tip that I would leave with you is my motto: do what you can with what you have from where you are. And by doing that, you will realize that you are already equipped with everything you need to get out of the circumstances you are. I cannot tell you how many times that is all I needed to get out of something that I needed to get out of. And I was looking outside, waiting for someone to give me the answer as to what to do, when the whole time it was already inside of me.
I love it. Thank you again, Rebekah Hope, for coming on. Go check out her book, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Kick Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.